If you are looking at the images coming up on your TV screen, cars on fire, looting, people defacing buildings, and then you hear Maxine Waters say, what are these cops doing? That feels tone deaf to me, right? It feels as though Maxine Waters doesn't get it, that people are like, what? Like, this doesn't make sense. Given what we're seeing on TV, this appears to be yes, law enforcement should respond to those things, right? Again, you must pick fights on your preferred ground. You should not engage on an issue. What Democrats should say is, look, we condemn all violence. There should be no violent protests. People, if they want to protest, need to do it peacefully. Any violence is not what we support, but we do want to have a serious conversation about Donald Trump's deportation policies and what they mean for this country.
I think the Democratic Party's kind of lost its mind. I think that you cannot tolerate that people are harming government property and harming federal officials executing the job that the president or the secretary of DHS or whomever has ordered them to do. That, and I think one of the reasons Newsom and Bass at first didn't really move is they didn't really see a problem with it. Like, okay, there's a little bit of violence, okay, but like this is okay because it's in the name of what we believe, which is to not help enforce immigration. We've always talked about at some point, good, kind of normal people are going to start getting swept up, whether it's the busboy or the people at Home Depot getting ready to try to go paint a house or pick up day labor work. But the bottom line is you cannot tolerate people in this country illegally or anybody banging on cars, throwing rocks at people. You just can't allow that. It looks like a third world country.
We're several days into these Los Angeles riots, and you still have the Democrat leadership out there saying that Donald Trump is a dictator, and these riots are peaceful, okay? But now, of course, you're starting to have some cooler heads in the Democrat Party come out, like Chris Cillizza and Democrat strategist Dan Turrentine, saying this is not a winning message for the Democrats. The people are going to be on the side of Donald Trump, and this, of course, is an issue that Donald Trump is still very popular with, and he actually won on. So that's exactly what we're going to see today being discussed on The View, how out of touch their take actually is. But before we begin, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
Now, is it warranted, or does this sort of escalate the situation? I mean, whatever happened to states' rights? I thought that was what you do, because you tell the state, this is what we're thinking of doing. You don't just send people in. You don't just send troops in. But what do I know? I've never run a state. But I don't really, when you come in and everyone is, when you go into the donut shop to look for people and you're dressed in tactical gear, you're creating an issue. You're creating a problem. You want people to come, you've scared them. Even when people are supposed to be there, when they come to talk to the judge, you're arresting them right after. What is going on here?
I think what really matters from sort of a long view here is the fact that he is militarizing and deploying the Guard for the purpose of policing Americans' protest activity, right? Our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly. And there's a very big, stark demarcation between military troops and law enforcement, public law enforcement, civilian law enforcement.
Right.
And you are an army turned inside to police its citizens can cause chaos, fascism. And so I think that's the way, and civil war. I think that's the way we need to look at it, because deploying the National Guard is supposed to be a last resort. But what this president is doing is that he's saying he's going to deploy them anywhere in this country where there is protests. So that is certainly not a last resort use of military troops. And one thing that I'll finally say is that there was some really important recent congressional testimony in December, and it was from retired Major General Randy Manner. And he said members of the military are not trained in civilian law enforcement because it's not a military function. So military involvement in mass deportation efforts would undermine the public trust in our veterans, in our armed forces. So it is escalating this situation.
And we need to know that the last time a president circumvented a state governor and sent in the National Guard without the governor requesting it was in 1965 when Lyndon Johnson sent in the National Guard to protect protesters who were civil rights protesters in Alabama, where there was that racist government. Today, he is sending in the National Guard to attack the protesters who are there. And look, this for me hits really close. I'm Latino, I'm an immigrant. These are my people who are getting dragged through the streets. I want to say to the Latino community, we must be strategic. We must be nonviolent. We have the right to protest. We are Americans. This is our country. We have the right to free speech, but we cannot fall into the trap that Donald Trump is setting of wanting to turn this into violent protests and distract from his feud with Elon Musk, distract from the parade that he's throwing himself for his birthday, distract from the chaos of his tariffs. And we have to show up with American flags because we're not invaders. We are Americans. And so many of the people that are getting detained are here under some legality. So why are people protesting? People are protesting because ICE showed up, masked, right? The people who didn't want to wear masks during a pandemic really want to wear a lot of masks now that they are dragging women through the streets.
What complete and utter delusion, all right? You have Sonny Hostin out there saying, oh, this is about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and Donald Trump taking on this whole Civil War aspect and using fascism to tamp down on that. No, Donald Trump mobilized the National Guard because you had these supposed protesters out there attacking federal buildings and attacking federal law enforcement. That is quite a bit of gaslighting coming from the View there. Let's go ahead and start with Sonny Hostin, say that Donald Trump has mobilized the National Guard to attack people's protest, to attack freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. No, the National Guard was called in because you had a whole bunch of peaceful protesters supposedly attacking federal buildings and federal officers, right? They're just out there doing their job and all of a sudden, bam, you have violence, all right? It's a reaction to that, all right? And as much as Gavin, Newsom, and Karen Bass are willing to accept a certain amount of violence in their own cities, in their own states, all right, Donald Trump is not, right? He played that game back in 2020, and he's not having it a second time. And I suspect the reason this was allowed to escalate to where it's at is because you have the Democrat leadership in California most likely telling the police to stand down. That's why it escalated to where it's really at. So Sonny Hostin, of course, has to wake up. And then, of course, you have Ana Navarro basically saying the same thing. The National Guard was brought in to attack the protesters. No, they were brought in to protect ICE, to protect the federal buildings, all right? That's the only reason they were there. If ICE was allowed to do their jobs, this never would have happened. But of course, she's complaining about the wearing of masks. That's because the left is out there actively doxing these people, right? Threatening their families, threatening their homes. That's why they're wearing masks, all right? Now, do I agree with law enforcement doing that? No, not necessarily, but I understand why they're doing it. It's the same reason I'm wearing this cartoon face on this channel, okay? But you also have Ana Navarro out there saying, we need to start waving American flags. Because guess what? It's a whole bunch of suspected Mexican nationals out there who are in the country illegally waving the flag of their country, all right? Are they assimilating into this one? Are they accepting the American culture and the American dream? Or are they just trying to take all of the benefits of being in this country and then shipping the money back to their homeland, all right? Which is true. So at least she's savvy enough to recognize that, yeah, not a good optic to be out there setting things on fire and attacking federal workers while waving a foreign flag, okay? But these ladies are completely off the hook here. They have no idea what they're talking about because all they're understanding is what they're being fed. These are the peaceful protesters that Donald Trump is trying to tamp down on and destroy in this nation. Even though while she's speaking, they're showing part of those violent protests, okay? But never mind any of that. This is just the common understanding of the left. They're going to lie and obfuscate and, of course, gaslight their way into oblivion, all right? And I say keep it up because the American people want law and order in their streets, and they definitely don't approve of the rioting and now looting that is happening in California. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.